Hey everybody, and welcome back to the Freedom Adventure. The Freedom Adventure is a channel where we, one project at a time, convert an old decommissioned ambulance into our very own miniature Class C motorhome. We went ahead and we chose a refrigerator for our camper. Not only was it going to be for our camper, but it's also going to end up being a refrigerator for our off-grid cabin once we get to that point. Now, folks, there are a ton of refrigerators on the market. I think you'll agree with that. There's the standard propane refrigerators or the propane/electric refrigerators that you see in most camper builds. And then, of course, there's the straight 12-volt refrigerators that you see, and that's actually what we ended up going with. Now, the model that we ended up purchasing was the IceCo JP40 Dual. There's a lot of reasons to buy this thing, but today I'm here to tell you why we decided to purchase this and why this model and why this particular type of fridge, the 12-volt refrigerator, over some of the other options that are out there. Now, obviously, we're building an RV. So the first question a lot of folks are going to ask is, well, why not just use a standard RV refrigerator, one that's propane while you're going down the road and then plugs into 110 electrical when you get to the campsite? And that's actually a great question. Matter of fact, that was the direction that we were going to go to begin with, but after doing a little bit more planning about how we were going to use our camper, we decided to go ahead and go with the 12-volt version. The 110, it just really didn't fit into our build ideas because our build ideas included an off-grid cabin, and 110 you're going to have to convert out of 12 volts. So why do that? Why not just run it off the 12 volts to begin with? The typical RV refrigerator is a combination of propane powered while you're going down the road, and again 110 once you get to the campsite. Now, our intention was to be able to use this camper as an off-grid camper, so we need the ability to not be able to be plugged into shore power. So the 12-volt option obviously made more sense for our particular application here anyway. The 12-volt, it was just all about efficiency and convenience for us. So our refrigerator is going to have to pull kind of a double duty. To begin with, it's going to have to be the refrigerator for our camper build, and that goes without saying here. That's obviously why we're buying it. But it's also going to have to be our primary refrigerator in our off-grid cabin, which we plan on embarking on that journey here soon. Matter of fact, the whole point of this ambulance camper conversion was to create a vessel in which to live in while we were going ahead and building our off-grid cabin. So bottom line, it had to be something kind of portable. We needed to be able to pick it up and carry it from one place to the other. The 12-volt refrigerator works perfect for us because we can do that with it. It's going to be the perfect thing for the camper. It'll be great for the cabin. And also it's going to be perfect and also perfectly sized, I might add, in the back of the Jeep or any other vehicle that we decide to take out to the cabin. Or maybe we just need the portable refrigerator/freezer unit to take wherever we go. The 12-volt cigarette lighter adapter outlet is like just perfect for this because you could plug it into pretty much anything that you're in vehicle-wise. So really those are kind of our basic reasons for choosing the 12-volt fridge versus, your standard 110 electrical/propane unit that you see in standard campers. Your application may vary, but this is obviously why we decided to go this direction. It's not profound reasoning, it just fits the check boxes that we need checked off for our camper build. Now, that being said, we decided to go ahead and choose IceCo as the brand. And here in a minute, I'm going to give you kind of a walkthrough of this machine and tell you kind of why we chose to go with it over so many of the other 12-volt refrigerators that are out on the market. After all, guys, IceCo is by far from the least expensive unit out there, but there are a list of reasons that I decided to go ahead and make that decision rather than something less expensive, something like BougeRV or one of the many other options that a person has in the 12-volt refrigerator market. All right, guys, well, there it is. In all of its glory, the IceCo JP40 Pro-D. And man, this is just one good-looking machine. Matter of fact, the appearance of this is probably one of the biggest reasons I went ahead and decided to choose this over a couple others that I was looking at. It's just a great looking machine, folks. I'm not going to lie to you. I love that metal band going across the top, and I do happen to know that is metal for a fact because somehow or another I have managed to put a little ding in this thing right here already. Not sure how I did that, but I most certainly did. Now, the looks of this without a doubt are one of the primary reasons I chose this. I'm really big on aesthetics, and man, when it comes to 12-volt coolers, I don't know that anybody really does it quite as good as IceCo does, not just this model, but there's several models they've got out there, and they all have one thing in common, and that is that they do look really, really good. And although aesthetics did play a big role, it certainly wasn't the only reason that I chose this machine, but that's what we're about ready to get into. And I'm going to start giving you guys a list kind of the things that I like about this, and even a few things that I don't like about this, but there's much fewer things that I don't than I do. Well, like I said, folks, there's a laundry list of things that I really do like about the JP40 Dual, and I'm just going to go ahead here and start off with just the appearance of the machine itself. It's the primary reason I purchased this thing was the aesthetics. Then once I got into it and I started doing my homework and my due diligence in terms of the research, there's a lot more reasons than just the exterior looks to go for this unit. I'm not going to lie, the looks, definitely my number one. Probably the second thing I like the most about the JP40 is just the overall quality feel about the machine. Everything about it, you know, when I lift it up, when I carry it, in particular, when I open the lid up and close the lid, it's just got a rock solid feel to it. The lid opens both ways when you take the lid off and you put it back on there. It's just got a solid feeling. I don't really know any other way to go ahead and describe it. It's kind of like on a vehicle. When you slam the door, some cars sound like a Folgers can that's empty, and some cars just feel like a vault door when you shut that thing. And that's kind of what the JP40 reminds me of, is that vault door when you shut it. It just makes you feel good about it. It certainly does me. It just kind of screams quality. One of the other things that really does make a difference to me is kind of the fit and the finish of the unit itself. When I'm talking about that, what I'm talking about in particular are these little handles here. The handles on the unit are extremely rigid, and when you lift it up, you definitely feel that. There's no flex in these little handles here. There's one on both sides for carrying the unit around, and it just feels rock solid when you do that. Dual functionality, that's a big one. When I first started looking at the IceCo refrigerators, I wasn't going to go with the Dual. I was actually just going to go with the JP40. I'm glad I did go with the Dual because this lets us take that quart of Haagen-Dazs with us, or for that matter, if we've got ice that we want to bring for our drinks or just whatever, we're going to have that option to do so. But at least we've got the versatility, and granted, it's not a ton of food, but for a weekend adventure, it's going to work out really well for us, I do believe. This thing's capable of getting to temperature very fast. Matter of fact, I've had this thing for about a week now, and I've been playing around with it, and what I've discovered is this thing will get from whatever the ambient temperature is, and I think the hottest it's been is in the mid-80s. Plug it in, set it to 0, and this thing will get there under 30 minutes. Folks, I haven't done a stopwatch test. I can't tell you that number is like 15 minutes or 22 minutes. I just remembered about 30 minutes in to jump on my app and check, and sure enough, it was at 0. 30 minutes, however, compared to my understanding of a standard camper refrigerator, is pretty awesome. Matter of fact, that works out really well. Another thing I like about this is the fact that when you open it up, there's 2 little lights inside of this that turn on. What's weird about it is one turns on pretty much immediately, and the other one takes a split second to turn on. As a matter of fact, when I open it up, I always kind of briefly think that there's something wrong with the other one because it doesn't turn on at the same time. I'm sure IceCo has their reasoning behind that. I don't know what that reasoning is, but whatever, man. I still love the fact that it does have those lights in there. They don't really appear that bright when you're in a bright situation, like if you're outside or if you're inside of like my shop building, for instance. If I open it up while I'm in here, the lights do turn on. They do illuminate. It's obvious that they're on. But when they come on, they don't just beam out at you. However, if you're in a completely dark shop, or if you're outside and you open this up, they actually do a really good job of illuminating everything in the fridge. Other than the appearance of this particular cooler, the big reason that I decided to go with the IceCo brand over something like, say, the BougeRV was flat out one word: compressor. These things have a C-Cop compressor in them, which I believe used to be called Danfoss. At least that's what my Google searching has led me to believe. These things are pretty impressive. They're highly efficient and they're reliable. IceCo puts a 5-year compressor warranty on this machine, so if that's something that's important to you, or rather the longevity of the machine itself is important to you, this might be something you look at into buying. The fact of the matter is, the competition, from what I can tell you, has usually about a 2-year warranty on their compressors. Obviously nowhere near what IceCo offers. Upon the research, I was like, okay, what are CCOP compressors? So I got on ChatGPT and I got on Google, and the more I found out about these things, the more impressed I really was. These things are used in a lot of medical equipment. They're used to transport vaccines. They're even used to transport organs. The compressor in those machines are CCOP compressors, or at least the majority of them is what I gather. I find that really, really interesting because, guys, I can tell you this. After deconstructing a 24-year-old ambulance, one thing I can tell you without a shadow of a doubt was the medical equipment that they used in this thing, at least the stuff that was still here, was in amazing shape. Everything from the vacuum pump, the power inverter, switches, all this stuff worked flawlessly, and this was at 24 years old. I can't imagine a better situation than that when it comes to something as trivial as a cooler, but you've got that peace of mind knowing that the compressor in that thing is made by the same manufacturer that produces the compressors in a cooler that transports human organs. Obviously, nothing about my cooler is a matter of life and death, but the fact that they use it in medical equipment, that blew my socks off, folks. I'm not going to lie to you. That's really impressive. That combined with my knowledge of what was in this ambulance when I deconstructed it to create what you see around me right now. So the bottom line, you've got a superior warranty that pretty well outshadows the competition. Reliability, or at least what I perceive as reliability, when you're going to throw a 5-year warranty on a piece of equipment, that screams not arrogance, but confidence in your product, in its quality and its longevity. So when I went to look for the cooler, one of the big things I looked for was its physical size. You see, the size of this camper is approximately 8 foot wide, it's 14 feet long, it's a little over 100 square feet. That's not a lot of room when you really think about it. Matter of fact, you don't have to think about it. It's just not a lot of room. But the fact of it is that this thing had to go somewhere. Being that I wanted to have a queen size bed, a restroom, a dinette, and also a small kitchenette, there was really only a few places for this machine to go. Where we decided to put it was underneath of the bed. It's a snug fit, but it does fit. It's just going to require, go ahead and you're going to have to lift it, drag it out, get what you need, and then shove it back under the bed when you're done. As an additional layer of security from our neurotic dog, we're probably going to end up having to put a cabinet door or something in order to guard handles and or other chewables on the machine. So obviously I could have found another machine that would have fit the hole that I had available for this, but when I decided to go with IceCo, I simply started looking at the models they had available, looking at the size, and then I started doing some research on that particular model, and in this case it's the JP40 Pro-D. Now, all that being said, the size of this thing is not huge. We ended up going, I believe this is a 42 or 43 quart cooler. I can't remember exactly. For what we're going to use it for, at least weekend adventures and perhaps the week-long extended stay at our cabin when we go out there to start getting the build going, I think that's going to be enough for us, or at least up front. We may have to think about expanding later. Primarily, this is for the camper. But once again, it's going to end up pulling dual duty, as I mentioned before. IceCo does make several coolers that are much bigger than this, but given the fact that we're going to have to carry this from vehicle to vehicle and from vehicle into the cabin situation, why make that more difficult than it needs to be? Now, efficiency-wise, the CCOP compressors do have a history of being fairly efficient compressors. That was important to us too, because this rig is built to be an off-grid rig, and we are going to have about 1,200 watts of solar panel on the roof. We have only about 200 amp hours of batteries under the seat here right now. That may end up getting added to depending on our needs when we get down and dirty and we start using this machine. But right now we have limited supply in terms of electricity. As long as it's sunny outside, the solar should do a pretty good job of charging the batteries, and it shouldn't be an issue keeping a refrigerator alive. However, every watt counts when you're on limited resources, so I did want it to be an efficient unit. The JP40, I want to say, while the compressor's running, pulls roughly about 500 watts of power. On idle with nothing more than my overhead lights, this camper pulls roughly about 1 amp of juice. And while the compressor's running, This thing pulls a total of about 3 amps total. That's pretty impressive, guys. Matter of fact, I don't think I could look for a better case scenario than that, but do keep in mind that we are running a 24-volt system. That does make a difference when it comes to your amperage draw. The watts are going to be the same, but your amperage draw is typically about half of what it would be if you're running a 12-volt system. Also to note on my list of things I like about the JP40 was the fact that there's multiple powering options. You could run this off of 110 AC, you could run it off of 12-volt DC, and I didn't know it until I got the machine here, but you could run it off of 24-volt also. So on my charge setup on this, underneath of the bed platform, I've got a cigarette lighter adapter outlet that's wired just for 24-volt, and it goes straight to my bus bar, and there is an inline fuse on that, but that's what I've got this powered off of. There's 2 different locations for the 12-volt or 24-volt source. There's one over here on this side, and then one on the other side as well. On the 110 side of things, that's just over here on this side. There's only one of those plugs, but that's okay. Fact is, though, that you can hide your wiring a little better if the aesthetics is important to you, but if you've got this thing like in my Jeep, for instance, depending on where your 12-volt outlet is, maybe you've just got one on the dash. So plugging it in on that side might make sense. But maybe you've got that outlet towards the back of the vehicle, and depending on how you want to load this thing in your vehicle, maybe this side makes more sense. But at least they give you that option, and that's pretty cool. My understanding is if you leave this lid open for an extended amount of time, then it will set off an alarm and let you know that the lid is open. Now, personally, just me, it really doesn't matter. Like, I'm going to know when my cooler's open and when it's closed. However, if you've got kids, and in our case, perhaps grandkids, that's a thing that could happen. Matter of fact, it's not uncommon at all when my grandkids are around for the refrigerator door just to be left hanging wide open. It's not done with any malice or ill intent, but the fact of the matter is that is a real thing. So that alarm on this, that's a pretty cool thing to have too. Another added plus that this thing gives you is it won't kill your battery. So if you've got this in your vehicle, and you're running off either a 12-volt system like in my Jeep, for instance, if you're running on that 12-volt system, this thing will shut itself down before it kills your battery. 9.6 volts is the lowest this will let a 12-volt system get before the cooler shuts off. 21.3 volts is the lowest it's going to let a 24-volt system get before it shuts itself off. That is a peace of mind. I've often wondered about that, and especially before I purchased this and found out about that protection. If you've got hot power to your cigarette lighter adapter like at all times, it'll be really easy to just forget that this is plugged in, get to your destination, go into the hotel room or whatever the case is, go about your business, and totally forget that your cooler's sucking down the juice of your vehicle. If it didn't have that battery protection, it's inevitable that you're going to come back and your battery is going to be graveyard dead. The fact they give that to you, man, that's a peace of mind. I think most manufacturers offer an app for just about everything these days, but IceCo is no different. I did download the IceCo app, and I don't know how heavily I will use it, but the fact is that they do offer it. You can get on your phone and you can see which compartment is what temperature, and you could even get on there and lower and adjust the temperatures from your phone. Again, I don't know how much I'll use that, probably more than I think, but time will tell. The other thing that they offer, and I did have a chance to play with this a little bit today, is that app does work on your CarPlay. At least I don't know about Android, but I can contest that it does on an Apple device. I went ahead and I pulled the app up, and honestly, it's pretty lackluster. It's basically about 4 different things that you can see. It's really no different than what's on your phone. It just gives you an idea of where the temperature's at on both sides of the cooler, and then you could also change it from your CarPlay screen. Once again, I don't know how much I'll use that, but it's a really awesome option. I guess if you're on the road and you don't want to stop and check on your cargo back there, or not really cargo, but your groceries or whatever's here in the cooler, you don't have to. You can just pull the app up on your screen, but I guess you could on your phone too. So once again, I don't know how much value that'll have to you. It's not a lot to me, but time will tell, like I said. Time will tell. I had mentioned it before, but the sturdy construction of this thing is really amazing. You can actually use this as a seat to sit on. So in a camper that's no bigger than the camper that we've got here, Anything that's got dual functionality is welcomed with open arms. So if I've got something I could use as a refrigerator and then pull it out from underneath of the bed and have either a place for myself to sit on or a guest to sit on, that's an added bonus for sure. Anything, like I said, that has more than one function and a space that's no bigger than this, that's worth its weight in gold. One thing I had no idea that this was going to come with was a cooler koozie. And by cooler koozie, what I mean is a insulated bag that the entire cooler fits down into. Now, initially I thought, man, this is kind of weird. I don't know why I'd want to use this. I don't know if it's just for aesthetics or if it's just an added R value for the insulation of the unit. Certainly think it would be an insulation thing just because of the materials that the koozie is actually made out of. Once again, I don't know how much I'll use it. When I look down and I see the dent in the side of this thing that I found today, you know what, maybe a little padding on the outside is not a bad deal. The koozie, however, is really good in construction. It looks like it's going to fit amazing. I haven't really messed with it, honestly. I've seen it on other YouTube videos, and the machine fits in it like a glove. It's got little cutouts for the wheels. It's got cutouts right here for the ventilation for the compressor. Obviously your handles, and it's got little cutouts for the power ports also. It looks like it's a pretty good idea. The majority of this thing's life will be spent inside either the camper or the cabin. So, I don't know how many times I'm actually going to go ahead and pull that koozie out and get this cooler put into it. Cooler's roughly about 42 pounds, I think. So putting it in that bag is going to be a little bit of a challenge. If you've got 2 people, that'll probably help. But if this thing's full, that's not going to be a lot of fun. Either way, though, it's really neat that they decided to give that with it because it wasn't really advertised on the website. When I looked at Amazon, it said nothing about a cover like that came with this, so it is an added perk, and I love added perks. All that said, that's a pretty good list of things that I do love about this machine. There are, however, a list of things that I'm not so fond of, and there's not many. One thing for sure that I'm not fond of on this unit is the long handle on the side that does not have the wheels. So this handle right here, when you grab a hold of this, it's got a lot of flex in it, guys. I'm sure it's plenty strong, and I'm sure it'll do the job that it's meant to do when you're dragging this across the park or you're dragging this up to your vehicle. I'm sure it is constructed heavy enough that it'll lift whatever you've got in this machine. But I'm real big on form and function. So when something twists like this, that just doesn't look good for me. That's not a big thing, granted, but since I'm talking about things I don't like, that's definitely one of them. The second thing that I'm really not fond of on this is these little rubber flappy things here that cover the power ports. They're there to protect them. They're there to keep stuff out of the power ports, and I get that. But they really are just kind of loosey-goosey sitting in the hole there. I feel like that's something that's probably going to be like the first thing that fails on these coolers. And when I say fail, I don't mean it's going to destroy. I just mean it's probably going to fall off the cooler. I could be wrong about that. Once again, time will tell, and maybe one of these days after I've had this for a year or two, I'll come back and I'll do a 1 or 2 year review and just let you know kind of how the thing is held up, if my premonitions are true. Other than the handle and the flappy thingies like I was talking about, really the only other thing that I'm not super happy with this cooler is the fact that it didn't come with a particular basket I was hoping it would come with. Now, when this is opened up, you could look in here and it comes with this basket, and this goes on the freezer side, or what I'm using as the freezer side of the fridge. You could reach in, grab this, pull it out, and whatever you've got in there is going to obviously come with it because it's in the basket. Would have liked to have seen one of those that kind of form fits for the other side of the cooler. I know I've seen those before in other IceCo models, and I know I've seen those in other brand coolers also. So I don't know why it wouldn't come with that standard in this, especially at the price point that you're paying for this thing. That's really all at this point I'm not happy with this cooler. Now, granted, that's only 3 things, and I think we'll all agree that compared to the list of things I do like, that's really not a whole lot. So if you've done any research at all on these little 12-volt fridges, you're going to know right off the bat that IceCo is certainly not the least expensive unit out there. Matter of fact, a lot of people are going to naysay this thing because the price is a premium price for a 12-volt refrigerator. I know that because I looked at so many of these things before I decided to go with the IceCo brand. Now, I told you why I personally chose to go with the IceCo brand, and with me, it was a compilation of a few different things, mainly reliability, mainly the fact that I'm going to have to use this for not only a residence, but also my camper as well. Didn't want the room for error. I wanted this thing to work. I've got a lot of other things going on at that point, so whether or not my cooler's functioning, really, I didn't want it to be one of those things I'm worried about. Now, I've tried to go cheap on a couple of different things. It didn't work out so well with me on the hot water heater that I chose for this rig. I had chose a Country Mod instant hot water heater. It seemed like a great value. It had some neat features. Some other water heaters they didn't have. But at the end of it, I ended up doing a ton of work. I got it installed and nothing. It didn't work. It didn't even so much as turn on. Now, I'm not saying that a BougeRV 12-volt refrigerator would not turn on. Odds are it's going to work just fine. For me, this was the machine of choice, though. I've said it for a long time, and I've said it many, many times, but the company that builds a machine does not put the value on the machine. I can't tell you this is worth it for everybody. I can only say that it's worth it for me. Fact of it is, it's the individual or it's the purchaser that determines the value of this machine. Everybody's got a list of check boxes that they want out of a particular machine, unit, service, or just whatever. More of those check boxes that are checked, all of a sudden starts adding more and more value to that consumer. In my case, it was appearance, it was construction, it was medical grade equipment that it was made out of. These are some of the things that were of value to me, and hence that's why this machine was worth what I paid for it. I'll put a link in the comments if you're interested in checking out the IceCo product. Again, all of my desires that were checked off by this machine, it made it worth it for me. I keep going back to the warranty, but that tells me that they're confident in their product's quality and the longevity of the product. That means a world to me, maybe it doesn't to you. Again, it all comes down to your list of wants and whether or not a product can fulfill those needs and wants. The reasons I would recommend it, obviously, I kind of went over on the things that I liked on the machine. Not a whole lot about the machine I don't like. In the future, maybe I'll go ahead and I'll try one of the less expensive coolers, something like the BougeRV. I got to tell you, I keep going back to the BougeRV units because they are a low price leader. Maybe I'll try that in my next build. I don't know. Matter of fact, if you guys have tried them in one of your builds, comment and let me know what your experience with the BougeRV product is. For that matter, anybody who's tried another product, let me know how your experience has gone. I'd love to hear those. Well, folks, that's about all I've got here for you tonight. I hope the information I've pitched out there about the IceCo product has offered some sort of value to you. I don't know if you're in the market for a 12-volt fridge or if you're not, but if you are, I would definitely go ahead and do a side-by-side comparison with statistics and just kind of the video that I've put out here, outlining the good, the bad, the ugly, and everything to do with the IceCo product. Once again, the machine is worth it to me because it hits some of the high points that I'm personally looking for. Now, maybe that's not going to resonate with you as much. Maybe you're buying yours for a different purpose. I don't know. I'm going to wrap it up though. I'm all done talking about 12-volt refrigerators for tonight. Thank you for watching. If you've made it this far, thank you very much. And if you have, please consider liking and subscribing to the channel. It would help me out a ton, guys, and I'd surely appreciate it. Happy adventures, folks. I hope I see you soon. Take care, y'all.